We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Hilchot Shabbat, and we are up to Siman Resh Peitet Seif Bet, the halachot of Seudat Shacharit Shel Shabbat, the second Seudah Shabbat morning, which is the obligatory Seudah, one of the two that are more important. We mentioned the difference between Seudah Shlishit and the first two Seudot. So here, Maran discusses when you don't have wine. What do you do when you don't have wine? And Seudah Shabbat morning, we spoke about what you do when you don't have wine on Friday night, and we said that you could say the entire text of a Kiddush on bread. Now, there is a little bit more clear, because what you're doing is, you do the Tilat Yadayim, you say Hamotzi, and then you say the entire text of the Bracha of Kiddush, which ends with Mekadesh HaShabbat. So it's pretty clear that you're saying Kiddush. Over here, what are you going to do exactly? You're going to wash your hands in Tilat Yadayim. You're going to come sit and say Hamotzi and eat the bread. Right? It's not really clear that you're saying Kiddush. So what do you do exactly? B'makom she'en yayin matzui have shchar u'sh'ar mashkin chutz min hamayim chamar medina u'mekadeshin alav. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if you don't have wine, you don't have grape juice, then you could have other drinks that are considered chamar medina. Water does not pass for it, because water, you just drink to quench your thirst, is not a drink that you will serve to somebody as a drink, as a kavod. So you find something that in your country, in your place, is considered something hashuv that they would give to people, and that would be considered chamar medina. So Rav Moshe Feinstein, for instance, says, he says, Coke is not chamar medina, right? Coke is a very degraded, low-class drink. Is not something that you don't invite somebody to serve them Coke. That's not what you do. You may do a coffee, a tea, especially in the British, the tea is a thing. You got fancy tea, fancy coffee. That's a chamar medina. But Coke, he says, is not, you could find others who entertain the possibility that maybe now it's different. Maybe the apple juice and orange juice is considered already chamar medina. Certainly beer and those beverages of alcoholic content, so that is considered also chamar medina. So you take one of those to say kiddush on. He says have a shchar. Shchar means beer. Ushar mashkin that are considered chamar medina, but chutz min hamayim. It's not considered, water is not considered chamar medina. Ve'im ein lo shchar ushar mashkin. If you don't have anything but water, Coke, whatever it is, ochel b'lo kiddush. You eat without kiddush. Now Ben Ish Chai says you can still say kiddush on on bread. It's not really clear, but you say the psukim and so on and so forth. But again, for all practical purposes, you're not saying a real kiddush in that case. Now, this does not mean that you don't have wine at home. It means it's not available in the town. You don't have at home, go borrow from someone else. It's not the heter to say kiddush, according to Maran, on a beer if your neighbor has grape juice or wine. Go get from somebody else. Talk about a case scenario in which the people in the city don't have wine. It's not benimtza. It's very difficult to find. So therefore, you do it on chamar medina. This is simple from the understanding of the Bet Yosef, but really is brought clearly la halacha by Matei Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Ayash of the Abedin of the Algeria. But the maaseh, if you have wine as a very, very expensive commodity, so it's difficult to get wine because it's expensive, or you don't like the wine. Remember nowadays wine is a whole industry. You go to one of these stores and wines come with pillows and blankets and in boxes with the manual and the history book of who 200 years ago opened the company. And about 50, 60 years ago, it was not like that. You had the heavy Malaga, and that was it. 2 types of wine in the stores. And if you didn't like any of those, so you imagine you hate wine. The Maharsha already speaks about someone that wine does not agree with them in terms of Simchat Yom Tov, as far as that is concerned. The Lashonot of the Ran already, Shagat Aryeh talks about it, and so on. So the post can talk about a case that it's either very expensive or you don't like it. So it's not that you can't find wine. You could find it, it's extremely expensive, or I hate it. I hate the taste of the wine. So then the Batei Yehuda, again, same Rabbi Yehuda Ayash, says that's fine. Then you could say on Chamar Medina as well. Chaubadia concurs with this as well in Yabia Omer in Chelek Gimal. But many places in Chutz La'aretz, among the Ashkenazim, they have already made it a minhag that they say Kiddush on Arak, they say Kiddush on beer. That's very bedi'evet. It's not. They should be mebatel that minhag, right? Or say Havdalah on beer. Not good either. Certainly Kiddush should not be said on other drinks if you have wine or grape juice.
Rabbi, for Havdalah, is that concept that it's not available in the town? Does that also apply?
So we'll get to Havdalah in just a moment. We'll get to that. But certainly for Kiddush, a person should not be doing that. And the shchar that the Shcharuch says you could say on shchar or other drinks, the shchar, which is beer, takes precedence over other drinks because it's a very popular drink. Is considered more of Chamar Medina than other important drinks, so to speak. Again, people could have a shot of whiskey but it's not as prevalent. Beer is something people eat with the bread, with their food. It's like a regular beverage, which is considered, still important. Is also intoxicating. So it has a chashivut, special chashivut to it. So that's more important and takes precedent over other ones. So you still have a hierarchy, even if you don't have wine. Now there are 3 different conditions that you have to meet in order for this drink to be considered Chamar Medina. A, it has to be no wine in town, right? So that's the first one. So if you have wine available, you always have to do with wine. B, that this place, the people drink this drink, it's very prevalent, people are accustomed to drinking it, and so on. And third one, which is the most perhaps controversial, makes this hard, is a mashke hamebasel. That means it's kind of intoxicating, right? So, therefore, if you don't have wine, you want to do on beer, which is also like 5% or something like that, alcohol content. It's considered mashke meshaker. Same would be for cognac, which is also wine-based, or arak, other grain-based alcohol beverages as well. But whiskey is considered questionable. Why is whiskey questionable? Because many countries, if you go to the Scottish places, it's a different story because that's what they drink. But regular communities don't necessarily have whiskey as one of the drinks that people are constantly drinking. So it really depends on the place that you find yourself. Again, if you go to Scotch, of course, is in Scotland will be a thing. In other parts of the world may not be a thing. So it has to be passing that test also, which is considered one of the drinks that you have. Again, but this segues into the whole discussion of other drinks that are not intoxicating, but they're considered very important drinks nowadays. Again, back a few hundred years ago, coffee was not a drink that was so important. It was not available even necessarily for people, and was not something that people did. Tea, depending on where you were. But again, as the generations have evolved, there are a list of beverages that are considered important beverages that you would pour for a guest when you have them, and it's considered respectful. You know, having a cup of fancy tea, have a cup of fancy coffee, even juices that are considered respectable. So those are all considered Chamar Medina in a scenario in which a person does not find wine. Okay.
Does beer need to be yashan?
Yes. They need to be yashan as well. That's without getting into too much details of that. They do need to be yashan. Says the Mishna Berura Chamar Medina in Ot Tet. Mishna Berura writes, "Mashke she'eno Chamar Medina, a drink that's not Chamar Medina, hiskimu harba achronim de'en mekadeshin afilu b'shacharit." That even during the morning kiddush, you can't say your kiddush hayom on it. Kaf HaChaim writes the same way. Chacham Obadia disagrees that technically speaking, you can say kiddush on it Shabbat morning, even though that's not considered necessarily a full-fledged Chamar Medina. It comes really from the Bet Yosef. Maran in Bet Yosef says that you don't need Chamar Medina for it to be okay for kiddush of the morning, and therefore Shat Dachak, when you get push comes to shove, you get stuck. You can rely on Maran Bet Yosef, and that is the Pesach of Chaobadia, that is the Pesach of Rabbi Moshe Levi in Menuchat Ahava. So this is certainly what to rely on. Now, the Ben Ish Chai that we mentioned before, he writes if you don't have Chamar Medina, this is in the second year of Ben Ish Chai in Parashat Bereshit, from the beginning of the second year, Shana Shniya, the Ben Ish Chai writes if you don't have it, or you have, but you can't drink it because you have whiskey, you know, or brandy, cognac, and you know it's going to hurt your stomach or whatnot because you have ulcer. Who knows? You can't have it. Says the Ben Ish Chai, in that case, you could say hamotzi only, and have in mind your bracha hamotzi again. What we said before, that you're saying it on the text of kiddush on your bread. Then you say hamotzi and you eat. And those psukim that you say, Im tashib b'shabbat raglecha, sot chafasecha b'yom kodshi, kata shabbat onik, al kem brach Hashem, all those is indicative that I'm saying kiddush. I'm just saying it on bread. It's not so clear. Fine. So that's the Ben Ish Chai that we mentioned prior. Now, the Mishna Berura ends the last piece, which is Ochel Belo Kiddush. The Shulchan Aruch said if you don't have any of these, so you eat without Kiddush. Mishna Berura says, well, if you have bread, at least, you say Hamotzi on the bread, V'asur le'echol davar acher kodem lachen, and you should not be eating anything before, so that's considered your Kiddush. You're saying it on the pot, and you shouldn't be eating some popper beforehand, some piece of chicken beforehand, because that is considered your kiddush, right? Lachen, so that tzad poskim in lo gampat. If you don't even have bread, ochel b'lo kiddush, then you mamash could eat without kiddush. Because what are you gonna do? Eno lo batel misad onek Shabbat. You still have mitzvah onek Shabbat, right? So eat whatever it is geschmack for you. If you don't have bread, you don't have wine. V'yesh lo tafshilu perot v'chayotze baze. You still have food, so you can have your rice and steak and all that and have a nice time. Yesh omrim de'im mesapeh she'aviu lo eze davar lekadesh alav yamtin eze sha'or. How about if I know that I don't have wine or any Chamar Medina, but I could get them? So in a few hours I'll have them probably, right? So should I wait a few hours until Shabbat afternoon, right? Says the Mishna Berura, Al kol panim en tzarich lamtin yoter mechatzot. You should not wait more than chatzot. You want to start eating before chatzot. Ve'imhu adam chalash, if you are a weak-natured person, then en tzarich lamtin, you don't have to wait at all. You can eat whatever you have without kiddush, without bread. Ve'smoch על מה שמזכיר קדושת היום בתפילה. But if you know that beforehand, then when you say the bracha b'kadesh Shabbat, have in mind to be yotzeh with kiddush, and that works. And when they bring you, if they bring you wine afterwards, chazak u'baruch, then you say on it the nusach of kiddush. Anyways, you just have to say we're praykefem, so you're good to go. Siman Resh Tzadi is a very important siman because it talks about the chiyuv of me'ah brachot on Shabbat. A person has an obligation to say me'ah brachot, 100 brachot every day. So on Shabbat becomes a little bit more of a challenge. By the way, how do you remember where this is? Because is Resh Tzadi is tsar. It's narrow, it's hard, right? To find Shabbat, it's 100 brachot. So you have to be ratz. You have to run. You have to be very, very mindful to make sure that you say me'ah brachot on Shabbat. So what's the problem? The problem is, on regular days, you have 3 tefillot, each one of them 19 brachot. So you already are, you have 57 brachot right there and then, just by davening Shemona Esrei. Then you have Birkat Kriyat Shema as 4, you have the 18 brachot in the morning, so that's another 22. So you're already by, who's counting, right? So almost 80 brachot, and you haven't even moved, right? Well, before Chazara or anything, right? That's like, and that's together with the 3 brachot at night, right? There's already 82 already. So all you need is another few brachot, right? Another few brachot. So you have 1 hamotzi and Birkat Hamazon, you have 6 brachot already, right? Hamotzi, 4 brachot of Birkat Hamazon, you have 6, so you have 2 seudot, 12 of that, you're good. You don't have to even think about it. Ashiyatzars and shahakos, and And Shabbat, well, you have 4 tefillot, maybe you have an extra musaf, but you're missing 12 out of 19 brachot of every Shemona Esrei. So 36 is knocked out right off the bat. So even if you add musaf, you still have 29 that you're missing, right? So therefore, it's something that a person has to be mindful. It's very, very interesting. People try to say besamim and add other brachot. It's beautiful, but who really is counting, right? So someone was spending time with the Brisker Rav, and he knew he was around Brisker Rav enough to know this bracha that he said is not something he likes to eat necessarily, and he made it in a way that's after the Suda. So he told him, he said, "You're doing this for Ma'ah Brachot, right?" So Brisker Rav looks at him, he said, 69. So he already was counting, where he's holding, So that's already of course, a tremendous level for a person to be mindful in that way. But this is a siman in Shulchan Aruch. It's not some random thing. Shulchan Aruch says, "Yarbe beperot u'megadim u'minei reach." You should have more fruits and nash, right? And also birkat besamim, different types of besamim. We thank people who set up a whole besamim thing over here. You have aseh besamim, mispeh besamim, mineh besamim. That's what they did it for. On Shabbat, you come Friday night, you say it once, and 3 of them, and then on Shabbat, you say it in the beginning of Shacharit, at the end of Musaf, that's another 6, that's 9, and Shabbat afternoon, you say another one, so that's 12 brachot you can have just from besamim right there and then. But nevertheless,
is that why some people say Birkat Hamazon and then they bring out dessert?
that's correct. One of the reasons that they cause, again, you could get into details of the halachot of brachot, intricacies of the halachot brachot, but one of the reasons that people, you find them have fruits and vegetables and all kinds of different things at the end of Suda after benching is in order to make it available for themselves to make more brachot. Achar Sudat Shacharit says the Ramah adds, V'im ragil b'Shabbat Tzahorayim, Mishnat Tzahorayim, if you are used to taking a nap on Shabbat afternoon, Al Yebatelenu ki oneg hulo. Right? That's also part of Oneg Shabbat. He just sticks this in. Now you'll see that really this should belong to the second Seif in Shulchan Aruch. We haven't even gotten there yet. Taking a nap for Talmidei Chachamim, and that has its own Seif. But the Rambam puts it here in Seif Aleph. But we're going to spend some time first speaking about this this brachot business. Says the Mishna Berura, Gam b'leil Shabbat Kodesh, tov she'ashtim bam hame'ah brachot. It's good to finish the me'ah brachot also at night. Now, the fruits that are brought to the table, it's mutar, both to the Shabbat Friday night and Shabbat morning, to leave it after Birkat Hamazon to create opportunity for more brachot to be said, right? This way you say bracha beforehand and afterwards bracha acharona also. This way you gain one or two brachot here and there, and that's fine. It says Chacham Obadiah, he has a tshuva in Chavedat that discusses this, and Moshe Levi also writes this in the first volume of Birkat Hashem, that a person is allowed to do that, even though that's not a simple concept, but nevertheless, it is there. Now, a set of fruits that they have the same bracha, so even if you bring them back to back, you should not be saying more than one bracha, even though that Maharam Galanti, Rabbi Moshe Galanti, he paskins in his Shelot Utshuvot that you should tell people to bring them one by one, and this way you could say more brachot to have your ma'ah brachot covered. The many poskim, Aruch HaShulchan, Chacham Obadiah talks about this as well. They are not so happy. So this is already machloket, a big machloket of safek brachot la'akel. Even though on Shabbat you cannot really rely on that. It's already pushing the envelope too much, and therefore that should not be done already. But leaving the fruits to be eaten after Su'udah, that is okay. That's fine. Now, you have to also be careful. Many people have this minhag that after Kiddush they have different salatim, different salads and fish and whatnot. They make brachot on and then they go wash, right? Minhag, old Sephardi minhag. I actually was just spending Shabbat morning with Rabbi David Yosef Shalita right after he became the Rishon LeZion, and his family also has this minhag. They brought all kinds of different things, and I was very, very hesitant because, again, if you have let's say two different fruits that have the same bracha, you have two things that are nefashot, and you eat a combined amount of kazayit, then you get into a problem, because if you have if you make bracha before hamotzi and you have a kazayit of apple or cucumbers, right? Then now you find yourself in a massive machloket poskim, whether or not you should say bracha borei nefashot before hamotzi or you shouldn't. So therefore, it's asur for a person to put himself in such a situation. You should not. You have to be very careful not to eat kazayit. Now, you can't say, well, I ate less than kazayit of apple and less than kazayit of cucumbers, so I'm good to go. Half a kazayit of this and half a kazayit of that is combined together for a problem as well. So if you're doing this minhag, you have to be extremely mindful not to get into this problem of bracha acharona, but nevertheless, that's a minhag that has been there, and a person certainly has what to rely on to add to their me'ah brachot, but you have to be careful not to get into this trouble of eating the shi'ur of kazayit, which would need bracha acharona, because then you get into this whole safek brachot business. This is again, Chacham Obadiah says this in regards to Hilchot Pesach. He has several tshuvot on this, two at least in Yechavedat, one in Chelek Aleph, one in Chelek Vav, and Yevi Omer and Chazon Obadiah brachot. He talks about this all over the place. Chazon Obadiah on Pesach. So this is something that the person should be certainly mindful. Now, Um, the besamim that people say is also something to be mindful of. Another point. For instance, if you bring besamim right before Hamotzi, and now right after Birkat Hamazon you want to say besamim again. Well, not so passionate. If you left the besamim right in front of you, so that's not considered Hesach Hadat. But if you took the besamim away, or you moved out of the house, or you took a walk and you came back, then as a Hesach Hadat, then you could say another set of besamim on those things that are in front of you. So that those are some of the basic halachot of Mea Brachot. But this is a chiyuv derabanan. It's not a chiyuv deoraita, even though that the Gemara dashes it from pasuk of Ata Yisrael Ma Hashem Elokecha Shoel Mimach Al Tikri Ma Ela Mea. But it's a chiyuv derabanan. It's not a deoraita biblical obligation. David HaMelech, the Gemara says that the whole story, he is the one that instituted the concept of brachot, but nevertheless, it's an important concept that the person should be very much mindful of, to work hard to make sure that he has the me'ah brachot every day. It's midat chasidut, the Maran Chida writes, to be on top of it, and we still have to answer one last question of when does the day start and end? When you say every day you have to say bracha. Do we start it from night, right? Erev ad Erev, right? Or do we start from the morning? So the Rabbi Omer says you started from Erev ad Erev. Start from night, like the day starts. Shabbat starts on Friday night. You start from Friday night as well. So that's we indicated this in the beginning of the talk today, but to say it explicitly, Tzach Chobadia says in a tshuva that he has in Yevya Omer in Chelek Yud, that we go after the Torah days. So it starts from night and it ends at night. So Friday night is when you start, and Motzei Shabbat is already considered the next day. And if you are lengthening your Sudah Shlishit, that now your Sudah Shlishit went into the night, and you want to say, well, the benching is 4 brachot, I need the 4 brachot for my Me'ah brachot, right? So can you consider that as after Shkia, right, until after Seta Kochavim, all of the brachot that you say in the Seudah, including the Birkat Hamazon that you say Shabbat, they're considered part and parcel of your Me'ah brachot for Shabbat. So even though the Shkia has passed up until the nightfall, you still have time to consider those as your Me'ah brachot as well, which brings us, Bezat Hashem, to the next Seif that we're going to discuss, Emirtz Hashem, in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.